We'll do it live. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Thing sucks.
You see, KYJ, things have changed just a little bit since the last time you were here.
I think you should see your oculus. Nothing wrong with my feet. I'm talking about your eyes.
I can even make my ass do tricks. Watch this.
You have any idea where you are? You're in the jungle, baby. This is WCW. That's right. Hold on.
For over 10 years, the world's #1 source for professional wrestling news and information. And once again, here's your hosts, Damian Nelson, Frank Cosentino, and the man they call Meathead. This is the Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Pro Wrestling Report. We're live Monday night, January 18, 2010. Coming from the downtown Milwaukee studios at 540 ESPN and streaming live at ESPNMilwaukee.com and PWRshow.com. Thank you to all of you joining us wherever you may be, and a lot to discuss tonight with TNA Genesis on pay-per-view just last night and WWE Raw going off the air in just a few minutes. Damian Nelson sitting alongside the man they call Meathead and the Kaz. As I said, we are live, and you can join us on the phone lines. Once we open up the phone zone, the number, locally, 276-ESPN, or all over the world at 1-800-990-ESPN. And we've also got a live chat room at PWRshow.com where you can join the conversation all night long. And people have been in there all night already talking about WWE Raw. Well, gentlemen, as I said, a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about TNA Genesis, which was on pay-per-view just last night. We're going to talk about our thoughts on WWE Raw from tonight. The Royal Rumble so far is shaping up to be an interesting pay-per-view. We start our 10 weeks of WrestleMania and a lot of discussion about where TNA has gone since that big show on January 4th. Let's start by talking about TNA Genesis last night on pay-per-view. It was highlighted by the return matchup of Kurt Angle and AJ Styles for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. TNA and the world title stays on AJ Styles in what many said was a very surprising heel change for the Ric Flair-aligned AJ Styles. AJ, who has not performed in a heel role in a very long time in TNA wrestling, did so shockingly and surprisingly last night in that tremendous main event matchup between he and Kurt Angle. Now, gentlemen, we have seen these two wrestle and tear it up time and time again, and every time it has been an excellent matchup. The question, though, are we seeing too much of it? As I enjoyed the match while watching TNA Genesis, I said, this is getting to be a little too familiar. And it just, sort of at that point became less interesting to me. And minus the heel turn, I'm not sure I would have really been up on the match. So, gentlemen, AJ still the champion. Ric Flair and AJ are going to be styling and profiling together now. Your thoughts from the main event from TNA Genesis.
It wasn't bad. I will have to say that after a while, and they have had great matches for a long time, but we haven't seen the side of it where AJ Styles is the heel. We've always seen him as the face for the majority of those matches. So now you kind of get a turn. But last night's match was good, but the surprise was the heel turn. Came out of nowhere, which adds a different spin on it per se. But I can't complain. It was another solid match between those two guys.
Solid match indeed. And Kurt Angle, who, I'm not sure he gets enough credit for what he does because he is a man who wrestles and works in a tremendously persistent state of pain. Yet he comes out and delivers time and time again, and we did find out that they're going to have a rematch in the very near future, and, that wasn't the end of it. But good match, a solid match, and Ric Flair, this makes some sense. This is the first time we actually heard him say why he was there in TNA, and that was to align himself with a man who he sees as a quote-unquote future world champion. I thought he was the current world champion, but be that as it may, a good pay-per-view main event to say the least. Now, there's a lot of mixed reaction and a lot of mixed reviews as to how the rest of the show was. And you can vote right now at PWRshow.com for what you thought of TNA Genesis, pass or fail. And we'll be going to those poll results in just a few moments. So, couple of big things happened last night in addition to that main event matchup. We saw Brian Kendrick debut in TNA Wrestling. We also saw the debut of or let's call it the return of the four-sided traditional professional wrestling ring to TNA Wrestling, which got a lot of bad reaction from some of the TNA loyals who are in the Impact Zone regularly and were there for TNA Genesis. And keep in mind, when you have TNA pay-per-views, you have a lot less of the walk-by theme park audience and a lot more of the TNA loyal. So, 6 sides are out, and apparently 4 is the new 6. Meathead, your thoughts on this, not change, again, well, it is a change, but on this revisit of the days of old in TNA Wrestling.
We've mentioned this in the pre-show before that we were going to talk about this, the change of the ring. And you're going to hear opinions from Frank and from Damian. And I, unfortunately, am going to be the person. It sounds like I'm trying to be different just to be different, but it's just not the case. TNA, in my opinion, not because I'm a loyal, I don't know if that's what we're branding them now. It's not bad. TNA should have kept the 6-sided ring. Now they look too much like the mainstream, too much like everything else, too much like WWE, too much like, and we're going to talk about this more, WCW.
Kaz, your thoughts? Do you like 4 or do you like 6? As it pertains to sides of a wrestling ring.
I'm more of a 4 guy. Hallelujah. It's about time. And
this
the reason
is
why
wrestling, not the Sunday show that we used to promote.
Right. It is. Here's the reason why I never liked it for the 4,000th time. I've been saying it for years. It's just too gimmicky. And if you're going to bring up WWE every week and say, they just these little shots, they're nothing big, but these little shots at WWE, well, then you have to be like them. If you're going to take shots at your competition, be like them. Have the 4-sided ring and not this gimmick circus thing that they've had for like 7-8 years.
How can you – that doesn't make sense to me, and I'm just going to throw my opinion out. Yours is yours, and mine is mine, and Damien's belongs to Damien, and the IWC has theirs. But you don't have to. If you're going to take shots at a company, if you're trying to pot shot at the number 1 while you're the number 2, that doesn't mean you have to intentionally be like the number 1. The reason that they were taking pot shots at them is because they're trying to promote their uniqueness. They're being different than the number 1. And by getting the 4-sided ring like the number 1, that's against the grain of what they're trying to do.
No, I think they're trying to compete directly with WWE. The way you do that is to show your talent doing the same thing, if not better on some weeks, in a 4-sided ring. In a 6-sided ring, it became a gimmick. Now you don't have it anymore. Now you're on the same level as them. They have just as good a talent in TNA. Now you can put apples to apples. To me, in the past, you couldn't because you were in this rinky-dink ring.
Playpen, if you will.
And it just didn't match. And now TNA, with the just as great talent, can go apples to apples with them, and now we can say, let's
enjoy the apples to apples. That actually, I like that. The apples to apples, that's a good analogy. But again, you keep calling the ring a gimmick. It's only a gimmick when you don't see it anywhere else. Just because they have something.
See it.
It is. It's available in Mexico.
I believe AAA uses it, but
right.
Nobody watches that, at least as far as the international audience that both WWE and TNA has.
Correct.
So it's a new new concept
different.
And a concept that
to
was
the
seemingly
American
exclusive
audience.
to TNA Wrestling.
To the American audience. Right. You're right.
All audiences but Mexico, to be honest with you.
You're right.
But here's the thing. Jim Ross covered it in his blog that I put out earlier today, I believe. It's not about the gimmick that was the ring. And here's what bothers me about it. 4 sides, more traditional. 6 sides, to me, and I've said this many a time, it served no purpose. Aside from being there and being different visually, it served no purpose. And when you got flippers, and if you're going to have flippers between the 2 programs on Monday night,
and now
they're going to see this.
Frank.
They're going to see this 6-sided ring and think, "What is this?" Not from a curiosity standpoint, but you potentially have the risk of throwing traditional wrestling fans off and them not engaging in the product. It was different. It was a signature item for TNA Wrestling. However, at the end of the day, what was it doing for them? Comparatively speaking, 2 weeks from now, people are not going to be talking about this 4-sided versus 6-sided thing anymore. They're going to come to grips with it, realize that it makes more sense, realize that the in-ring product has not impacted. We talked to several people.
No pun intended.
We talked to several people over the course of the years on this program and asked, because it seems that it's a big difference, and asked, what is the difference in wrestling in that 6-sided ring? And I think Sean DeVary, when we had him on earlier in the year, last year, was one of the first people to say, you know what, there's no difference. I mean, you have to be somewhat aware that it's, there's a turnbuckle where you might think the ropes are, but really, ultimately, there is no difference. So if there is no difference on the in-ring product, what does it matter at the end of the day?
Again, and the only reason I bring this up again is because, and I know I'm going to be a differing opinion.
No,
for the most part,
you're not differing, because from what we understood last night, a lot of the people that were watching didn't like that the 6-sided ring was gone.
I want to differentiate myself between the quote-unquote loyals that were at the show last night, too, is I'm not a loyal and afraid of change. That's not me at all. Because those are the ones that seem like they were afraid of change. And, oh, no, now they're putting it back more to WCW. And that's where, again, I think the hate is coming from. But I thought it made them different. And you're right, Damien. There was no other purpose to having that 6 sides other than it not being 4-sided.
We're going to talk about that much more in-depthly later on here in this program as we talk about the way some of those fans reacted in Orlando in the TNA Impact Zone.
And the consequences and results on future events.
Let's continue talking about TNA Genesis. We saw a couple of other titles change hands, the first of which being the TNA World Tag Team Championship titles. Those go on around the waist now, or off the waist of the British Invasion, and they go to Matt Morgan and Hernandez, the new TNA World Tag Team Champions, in a match that wasn't bad, but really at the end of the day, come against all odds next month. Nobody's going to be talking about this match. New tag champions, 2 singles wrestlers who've been tagging for a little while here, but thrown together somewhat into a tag team mix, and they are the champions, similar to that, I would say, of Jericho. Frank, your thoughts?
Yeah, now what do you do with British Invasion? I think you make a good point. Maybe people won't remember this in about a month.
Well, to that point, there is a lot of discussion out there in the internet wrestling community right now about the spoilers from TNA Impact, which was taped tonight. That's going to air on Thursday. We're not going to get into that because a lot of people don't like spoilers, and I appreciate that. I'm one of those people. But at the same time, there's some answers to the questions of the future of the British Invasion coming up this week on Impact.
That was my thought once that match was over. It was a pretty good match. But then I'm thinking, well, what are they going to do with these guys now? So we'll see what in the next couple of weeks, the storyline will continue.
Where do Morgan and Hernandez go from here, though?
Hernandez?
Morgan and Hernandez.
Is that what they're calling him now?
Ooh, Hernandez.
I think that's
or Hernandez more, or
no.
Hernandez.
I got to give credit to Octavius, so actually that's Octavius. It's Hernandez is all his. I don't know. I see a tag team title run for maybe 2 pay-per-views tops. There's really not much in it, to be honest with you. I think they need to drop the beer money. Or
drop the titles to beer money.
Yeah, or unfortunately, drop it to the band.
Oh, no.
I know.
Okay, what,
Frank,
would you rather have the Nasty Boys, Frank?
Frank, right now, you are the voice of a generation saying, "Oh, please, no. Oh, God, no." But
I'm a fan of Kevin Nash, and Sean Waltman does his best.
But Kevin Nash has kind of grown on me over the last 5 years, to be honest with you.
He works his butt off, and Sean Waltman did pretty good last night too. He took just about every bump there was.
He has to do the work.
But
he had to.
It bothers me that there's better talent to put over in tag teams, especially the ones that are coming up, and you start them as tag teams, and then eventually they become singles wrestlers. You got to push your young talent, and for Hulk Hogan to say a few weeks ago something about this is about young talent now, and then if it does go to the band, oh gee, that just throws everything out.
The Hulk Hogan, Eric Bischoff play right now, we've seen him on TV 3 weeks, or 2 weeks, but 3 appearances, the live show, the Impact After, and the pay-per-view. He doesn't know where he's going. There's a lot of mishmash.
He being
going
Hogan?
on. Yeah. there's a lot of mishmashing going on with the TNA. I'm confused by
well,
what's going on.
But keep in mind, they're completely changing the company around. So what was can't be, and what is will be. And I don't think you can fault Hogan, Bischoff, Russo, Jarrett, Dixie, anybody for that.
I'm not faulting him. I'm just saying his on-air character.
You've been in the Impact Zone
a couple times.
That room, that arena, whatever you want to call it,
it's
soundstage.
It's a TV
it's
studio.
All lit up. You have to add that perception, and then now I'm coming old school here, where the ring is just kind of lit up, and you show some of the fans, but not all of them. I know they want to.
Yeah. They did make some other changes, such as the entryway, and there's some new trussing in the ceiling and whatnot. It gives it a much more arena-type feel to it.
That perception is what I'm looking for. And I hope that Hogan is going that direction instead of everything's all lit up and then the fans are just wanting to be on. And now WWE does that. You can see the majority of the fans, but they also have about 8,000 to 10,000 at each.
Right.
So I was curious if they may do that in the future too.
And we'll talk much more about the Impact Zone and the future of TNA Wrestling when we come back. Remember, the conversation continues in the chatmosphere at pwrshow.com. This is the Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN and ESPNMilwaukee.com. Welcome back to the Pro Wrestling Report. Is this from Smokey and the Bandit?
No, this is the band's theme song, right?
Sing a load off. Fanny? Is it Fanny?
The song's just called Take a Load Off.
Take a load off, Fanny.
Welcome back to the Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN and ESPNMilwaukee.com. We're also live at PWRshow.com, the website of the Pro Wrestling Report. Meathead, what kind of discussions were going on out in the chatmosphere during that break?
Razor 2910, basically WTH, when he heard the music come in. What more can be said? That and they're asking for the number when they call from England.
1-800-990. I have no idea how that works.
I don't know. Yeah, you better call your operator on how to dial overseas.
Frank, you're internationally known.
No, rock a microphone.
No, you got to dial No, Fish,
you'll need a country code.
Yeah.
But
But
clearly, I have never called this station from England because I haven't really been to England before.
What about
I
that time you
apologize.
had to get bailed out?
Well,
another show.
Amsterdam?
Another
no, I've never been to Amsterdam. I've been to Germany, but never been to England.
But you didn't call the station when you were there?
Fish will get kicked out when he goes to see Liverpool versus Chelsea.
We're talking about TNA Genesis, which was just last night on pay-per-view, taking a few different discussion tracks, including the four-sided ring and the changes to the Impact Zone and the overall look of the product. And we're going to solicit your conversations when we enter the phone zone in just a few minutes. The number 276-ESPN locally or 800-990-ESPN all over the world and potentially in Amsterdam as well. If you are trying to call in, the lines are full right now. We've got Gabriel, Chris, and Glenn waiting to chime in. So as soon as we start getting the callers, make sure that you go ahead and dial in to get in where you fit in. Gentlemen, another title change last night. The TNA Knockouts Championship for the third time in as many months changed hands as Tara defeated ODB, Frank, to become the new TNA Knockouts champion in a 2 out of 3 falls match. And Tara able to take the first 2 falls in what was a very bizarre behaving, even more so than usual, ODB last night, giving up the Knockouts Championship just 2 weeks after she got it back. Meathead, your thoughts?
My thoughts are, for one, when was the last time we've seen a 2 out of 3 falls match that didn't go 3 falls?
Exactly. That's
and a 2 out of 3 falls match that featured female performers.
Yeah.
In wrestling.
Yeah, but, I mean, normally it's a win, and then you go to the third fall. That's why they're 2 out of 3 falls. You build suspense for the third fall. Not 2, check your pulse, and you're out.
3 minutes.
They can't make their minds up over there. Keep the title on someone for at least a pay-per-view or 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that change. David Hero called it. If you were following him on his Facebook or his Twitter, he must know some people.
Well, he knows where catering is, and that's how he met you, right?
I got kicked out of catering. It's a sore subject. Sarah, the new champion, ODB, nursing, I guess you can call it an injury. A couple of weeks back at a taping, she
well, that could be it.
Hurt her chest. Is that how I should say it?
Did something happen? Something pop? Rupture? Frank, you've been there.
What?
What do you mean, what?
Only in his dreams.
Where?
Oh, no. You've been there.
In his dreams.
Host the show. Don't answer the phone. Go.
Hey, you know what? Things happen. It could be hot news. You never know. As we said, Brian Kendrick debuting at TNA Genesis last night. A bit of a surprise. I don't know if he was expected to go up against the X Division champion, Amazing Red. Tremendous matchup between those two individuals to open the show. Amazing Red able to walk out still the TNA X Division champion. And I've got a big problem. Amazing Red, okay, he's the X Division champion. He seems not to be being thought about by the brass at TNA right now. But this is a man who I think, given the right package, if you will, and I think they were on their way with that with Don West, could be a major player in TNA wrestling. And last night his skills showed why. We just need a better persona, I guess, from the soft-spoken Amazing Red. Frank.
Yeah, you just said the word, soft-spoken. Give him a mic a little bit longer, and you can package the guy. Get some fan reaction out of him.
No.
Why not?
No, the guy's a great performer in the ring, but we've heard him on the mic, and he said that's exactly why he got Don West. I can't talk on a mic. Were his words.
Yeah.
The Amazing Red is amazingly a dud when it comes to being on the microphone. I mean, you know what? He's probably a great guy, and again, I like watching him work in the ring.
Yeah, because he's got great talent.
But he's a ginger. I'm just kidding. I don't have ginger hate. I'm just joking. But to be honest with you, I don't see him getting anywhere past the opening match on a pay-per-view.
And that's where it was last night. But again, it was a very good matchup, especially that finisher used by Red to get the pin on Brian Kendrick. I keep wanting to say the Brian Kendrick. Remember, he was trained by Shawn Michaels, guys. So
Shawn Michaels,
the one and only Shawn Michaels. So he's got some skills and some talent there, obviously. Other matchups on the card saw Sean Morley take on Daniels, and Sean Morley, formerly known as Val Venus, defeats Daniels last night in a direction and a move I didn't think made any sense and has no long-term viability in TNA.
You know, last week Dave Hero mentioned, and I actually agreed with him, that this was going to be a throwaway pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
it had to be, by the way.
And that match was
a
the
throwaway
match of the night.
That's terrible, too, because here you have a guy that should be still in the, if not the, high mid-card, he should be in the main event mix in Daniels, a company guy.
Yep.
And now he's jobbing out to somebody we haven't seen, literally on the main scene in 10 years.
Well, he was main scene here last summer.
Probably within about the last 5 years. I think fans still remember him from his days of being Bischoff's lackey. But as
Chief
Val
Morley?
Venus,
Morley?
nobody really. I'm sorry, Val Venus.
I like the guy
Today,
yeah.
no value. I'm
right,
sorry.
Exactly.
He was a one-trick pony as it pertained to his gimmick in WWE. And I think his time has passed. And it's not a knock on him personally. He's a good performer in the ring. But it's just
his promos bother me.
They sound
that happens every sentence.
But you know what? They were great when he was Val Venus. Right now, well, he's trying to be a little bit of Val Venus, and rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds cheesy and like a complete knockoff of what Val Venus was.
Right. You're absolutely right, Frank.
Pope was pimping last night, however, not pimping enough to defeat Desmond Wolfe, who had he had a new friend, as we heard, as he came down to the ring in a bit of a different demeanor and with a female valet. Did Desmond, who was able to get the win on the Pope in that matchup. A good match, a long match. Both men getting a pretty good reaction from the crowd. This one started hot and cooled off a little bit towards the end, but was still a good match in my opinion. And remember, I'm a fan of both men, so I thought the match overall had its place on the card. I don't know where we go from here. You'll find out what happens to D'Angelo De Niro this Thursday on an Impact if you choose to read those spoilers, which are available at pwrshow.com. But two great performers, and we've said Pope is pimping, Pope is money. Hopefully he continues down that path. But this was a needed win for Desmond Wolfe because it's been a few weeks, that he's actually been put over on TV.
Yeah, Wolfe deserves it. And, not to keep bringing up David Octavius Hero, who seems to be right more than he's happy, even though he's happy and right at the same time.
He's on assignment tonight.
My point being that Dave had mentioned this is one of the big guys that actually wasn't put over the TNA talents that were in-house already. He's made to earn his spot. And with, those consistent pay-per-view losses to Angle, now the Pope, the Wolf gets a decent pin over Pope.
Can you see him in the title mix?
Desmond?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can too.
He had always come in, and even when he was in Ring of Honor, Nigel McGuinness had this cocky, arrogant attitude going for him. It was stepped up a notch at Genesis. And I think with that type demeanor, he's a lot more valuable in TNA. And let's not forget, tremendously talented in the center of the four-sided ring.
He was talented in the center of a six-sided ring, too, but apparently that's not going to happen.
Thank goodness.
From there, we go to Jeremy Boras, JB in the back.
On the stick, like Frank.
And he's approached by Eric Bischoff, who relieves him of his duties. Jeremy Boras relieved of his duties, at least on TNA television, and there are a lot of people who are thinking that this was indeed factual and true, and Jeremy Boras has actually gone from the company. It could be true. We've not been able to confirm or unconfirm that. It was talked about on Bubba the Love Sponge. More on him later. Talked about on Bubba the Love Sponge this morning, but we do know Jeremy Boras is going to be off TV for a little while, a man who was very important to the company, TNA Wrestling.
But honestly, since TNA has been, up and running, has Jeremy really taken a vacation? I mean, granted, they got a light work schedule.
They get a vacation every two. No, but that's a valid point. If there's work to be done, JB's been doing it. JB's probably one of the hardest working men in professional wrestling, not just TNA. But at the same time, JB likes JB, and you can't knock him for that. And I don't know, again, if this was true or if this was a work, if this was an actual release. But, they're a little crowded in the back anyways. Christy Hemmy's doing a very good job.
She's doing an amazing job. Obviously the twins up front aren't hurting things, but she's actually doing her job as far as...
The Bellas?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Bella 1 and Bella 2, whatever you want to call them. She's doing a great job interviewing. Now, and
Bella, recognize who I am.
You're going to get to this, obviously, in a moment, but there's an individual who, I don't know if he's married to Angelina Love, but he is just awful. Unbelievably awful.
Ric Flair then comes in, and again, as I alluded to earlier, saying he knows where the greatest talent in the world is, and that it is his business, what his role in TNA is going to be, and that would be explained further later, as we talked about earlier in this program. Beer Money came out to take on the band, Elwood. And that would be the team of Kevin Nash and X-Pac. And we found out earlier today that the reason Scott Hall did not perform at TNA Genesis last night was because he was a little self-conscious about his physical appearance. He was not injured. He was just a little self-conscious about his appearance, didn't want to lace up the boots and put on that spandex and go out there and wrestle. So X-Pac, Six-Pac, took his place, Sean Waltman, and did a very good job of it, by the way. It's probably a better match with those two in it than it would have been with Hall and Nash, but they were not able to defeat the team of Beer Money after Scott Hall then came out at the end of the match and attacked a, air quotes, fan at ringside, which wasn't executed very good, but it still had a good bit of shock value.
Yeah, you add a storyline to it, which is good, but Scott Hall, if he's going to be part of TNA, he's got to get into the ring and do something. So
no, if that's the case, doesn't Hogan have to get in the ring and do something?
Well,
does Taz have to get in the ring and do something?
No, but the fans may want that. That eventually Scott
Hall...
They
want it more than knobs and sags in the ring.
If Scott Hall is just there every other week and just doesn't do much, that he'll lose his luster. So maybe if he gets in shape,
he's living on his name right now, and he's gonna live on his name for a long time. But you know what? I'm glad to hear that Scott Hall thought that, because you know what? That's a coherent Scott Hall thinking about what might be right for the business, not just I'll get authorized, man, and spit a toothpick at somebody. But you know what? Maybe that's a clean-minded Scott Hall. Maybe Kevin got in his head. Maybe Kevin can get him cleaned up.
But from a financial standpoint, that Kevin could have said, "Hey Scott, if you cleaned up,
there's money in us tagging up,
and if you
can if
you can get into some type of ring shape, no, here's your finance. You can get paid this year.
Well, he's getting paid for being on no matter what, but I mean, there's more money.
But
there's more money in the tag program.
Right.
When we come back, we're going to go into the phone zone and take your calls from all over the world. We're going to talk about the final matchup, the last match we have not yet discussed from TNA Genesis last night, which featured the debut of Ken Anderson, formerly Ken Kennedy of WWE. And this is the conversation continues. I keep losing my place there. I'm just so excited. We've got our 10 best WrestleMania moments, or 10 best WrestleManias coming up over the course of the next 10 weeks. All kinds of people waiting on hold very patiently. And the conversation continues in the chatmosphere at pwrshow.com. This is the Pro Wrestling Report at 540 ESPN and ESPNMilwaukee.com. Welcome back to the Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN and streaming live at ESPNMilwaukee.com and PWRshow.com. And don't forget, guys, you want to take us with you on your iPhone, you can go ahead and go to ESPNMilwaukee.com and listen live using the ESPN Milwaukee, the 540 ESPN iPhone application. Frank, you got that? You got the iPhone? You got the 3G there, huh?
No.
Frank's cell phone is rotary. What are you talking about?
Frank's got the iPhone. He's hip. He's with it. He's cool.
I have a phone. That's about it.
During the break, meathead in the chatmosphere at pwrshow.com. Some comments from the people out in the internet wrestling community.
Apparently, our IWC friends are still paying attention to what Dave Hero says. Jason Hunter, Cobalt Blue Scott Hall should be his new ring name. Cobalt Blue Scott Hall.
Ramon.
Okay.
Remember, Dave obviously mentioned last week that Scott Hall was wearing cobalt blue in his hair.
I remember. The last match to talk about from TNA Genesis just last night on pay-per-view was Abyss going up against, scheduled to go up against Bobby Lashley until he took him out in the back. And his replacement was a man who had been long rumored to be a part of TNA, and it finally happened. Ken Anderson makes his debut, and I thought strong fashion, let me rephrase that. I thought the debut was as good as it could have been given the circumstances, being in a match with absolutely no story behind it, so who cared about the match as far as emotional investment. But Ken Anderson now in TNA Wrestling. A lot of people thought it was going to be Rob Van Dam, RVD rather, and it was not. It was Ken Anderson, who is now a part of TNA Wrestling, and as he said, he crossed the line. Kaz, your thoughts?
I like how they gave the gimmick, and he used, obviously, the Anderson thing. And, yeah, for what it was worth, there was no storyline there, so he just came on. I thought he did all right. And now we will see he's kept himself in shape, as we saw over the summer, or not over the summer, a couple months ago. So there's no reason why he can't be thrusted into a title run, or at least in the title mix in the next 2 to 3 months.
Meathead, your thoughts?
I'm a little distracted by Frank's verbiage there, but I'm going to go ahead and concentrate on Mr. Anderson debuting in TNA. You know, I'm happy. Again, you know, a guy that marked out for Mr. Kennedy. Again, we saw him, great ring shape. You know, I've seen some comments of people that said, well, you know, this whole pay-per-view was full of people that had ring rust here and ring rust there.
Well, Taz kept saying ring rust, which was a problem in my opinion.
Yeah, you're right. But to be honest, these people don't know that these guys are working the independents every weekend. So they're wrestling every weekend. They're staying in shape. I mean, obviously you've watched Ken Anderson's videos on making burgers and sitting on the couch playing video games.
Yeah.
If you read his Twitter and Facebook stuff, he's sitting on the couch playing video games with his dog. So you would think that he has ring rust. They're ready to go. But then again, you know, for the most part, us and the IWC, we don't wrestle on a daily basis, so maybe we don't know what ring rust
I take
is.
bumps every day.
Yeah, I'm about to give you a bump in a second if you don't keep this show moving.
That'd be a great question for the listeners out there and people in the chat rooms. That who would you like to see Anderson match up with right away,
or anybody for that matter in TNA?
I'm curious because a lot of people know his style, and could it be AJ Styles?
And we're going to talk later on about, again, some of the reaction to some of the things that happened on TNA Genesis last night. But before we do that, let's enter the phone zone and go to a very patient Gabriel in New Jersey on line 1. Gabriel, you're live on the Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN and ESPNMilwaukee.com.
Fellas, how are you? I was actually the first caller last week.
Oh, congratulations.
Hey, you get the
Welcome
rest
back.
of my Diet Mountain Dew and my Styrofoam cup.
It might be a little flat by the time it gets out to New Jersey.
Quite possible.
Are you in Hoboken?
No, Ridgeville Park.
Oh,
You still pump your own gas.
Frank knows the Hoboken reference. Yeah.
Okay.
Sinatra.
Damien, I actually couldn't have said it better than you, what you said about Bubba the Love Sponge. I mean, the guy has, like, gray stubble, and he's trying to be hip. I'm kind of glad that this whole debacle with what he said about the Haiti tragedy went to heart with TNA, because from what I heard, they sent him home for a conference that they were going to have.
Yeah, he was supposed to be at the production meeting this afternoon, and this is all according to Bubba. Supposed to be at the production meeting this afternoon, was called before he got there and told not to come, and then his services would not be needed at the taping tonight. He's blaming it all on Eric Bischoff and saying, you know, Hogan's still his bud. Bubba the Love Sponge, in my opinion, and I say this having listened to his show. I gave it a try, and I'm a big Stern fan. He is just brutal. He is useless. I am sorry. He is just completely useless, self-serving, self-centered, in it for nobody but himself, and not at all entertaining. I appreciate the Bubba Army. I appreciate it if you like Bubba the Love Sponge. This was not the spot for him. He thought he was bigger than the business and was bringing, and this is arguable, though, thought he was bringing in a lot of people to TNA Wrestling, which he may have done, but at the same time, he's just pathetic.
There's no way he was bringing in more people into the TNA, viewing audience. All he was doing was bringing along people that listened to him and TNA at the same time. There was no gain in audience due to Bubba the Love Sponge. And again, I have listened to Bubba's show before. It's a lot different than the show that we had here when Bubba was in Milwaukee. Still, he thought he was Ricky Rackman from WCW Monday Nitro. Just, way out of place.
It is out of place, and hopefully he's gone.
He's a Howard Stern light. I mean...
No. He's Howard Stern. There truly is no comparison. Stern is real.
Yeah.
He does stuff to entertain, but Stern is real. Bubba's just he's trying to be cool. He's like when Jim Cornette said in 1997 about Eric Bischoff, wearing leather jackets, riding Harleys, and smoking cigars just to try to be accepted. That's Bubba the Love Sponge. I am sorry, and I have no desire to ever meet Bubba. I have not met Bubba. He could be a great guy, but in addition to his Haiti comments, which he did apologize for today via Twitter, by the way, in addition to those comments, I'm sorry, it's not my cup of tea, and I did not think he was bringing anything to the product. So hopefully this is not a work, and he is indeed gone.
I actually also read that same Twitter, and he was saying something like, "Oh, Dixie Carter can't handle my realness," and I'm like, "What are you talking about, man? You're not edgy. Just get off of TNA."
Yep, and don't mention Dixie Carter because she's gonna.
Oh, no. He name drops. That's what, I have it on very good authority that he randomly just calls up Kurt Angle. And they're not the best of friends. I found that out when I was down there for the live show. He just randomly dials up Kurt Angle so he can say, I was talking to Kurt Angle the other day.
Yeah, it's funny that I used the Ricky Rackman reference, but he's more like Mancow. And, by the way, thank you for the call. He's more like Mancow when Mancow had his
was better.
When he had his run in WCW. Remember that?
I remember that. Mancow was better. I was a big Mancow fan for a long time.
I was never a Mancow fan.
Mancow was on some religious channel like a week ago. Okay.
With Kirk Cameron?
No.
Let's go now to line 2.
Bananas.
Chris in Los Angeles out of the West Coast. Thank you very much for calling in. You're live.
Hey, what's up, you guys? Hey,
Chris.
My question is, how's it going? I wanted to know, do you guys know exactly how much wrestlers make? You know how in baseball and basketball and football, how they broadcast how much these guys make, but in wrestling you don't get that. And I know that wrestling isn't a sport, but...
Well, in general, contracts are structured differently between the two companies, and the 3 companies, Ring of Honor included. A lot of TNA talents are paid on a per-appearance basis. They are exclusive to TNA, but they might be getting, a couple grand a show. Might be higher or lower depending on the show, whether it be a TV taping, a house show, or a pay-per-view. WWE, obviously, much more structured. Merchandise.
So TNA guys make way more or less than WWE. I mean, obviously they do, but you guys know how far it is? Because the reason why I was asking, because it's like there's a lot of guys in WWE that just aren't used right, or they don't get used at all. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I could see them in TNA being, a lot bigger than they are in WWE. But it's like I've heard from other interviews that wrestlers have done that a lot of guys don't want to go to TNA because they're not going to make any money.
Well, TNA does have some big dollar contracts. They're paying some people in the millions of dollars a year,
just
which
like
is
the girl
fine.
from Survivor.
Yeah, exactly. They can do that, but the business piece of WWE is a lot more fruitful as it pertains to those things I was talking about a minute ago, all the other benefits that come with percentages of revenues than TNA. So it all depends. It's all about the individual and the deal and what the company is willing to give them and what the company is going to get out of it. So contracts are very different. They're different from person to person in each organization. We do know of some people's salaries, but obviously we're not going to share that with you right now. Let me just tell you this. In some cases,
pay-per-views, they get a little more.
There's merchandising, there's pay-per-view, appearance fees.
Yeah.
And
in some cases, you'd be very surprised. I think Randy Orton is just signed a new deal, WWE, to the tune of almost $10 million over the course of that time for, I think, 5 to 7 years. So there's some money there.
Another question I had was about, like, TNA going live.
Mm-hmm.
Like, would that be financially straining on them to go live every week? Because I think that would help them a lot.
They've got some options right now to cut back on some other areas to increase their ability to go live every week. But keep in mind their expenses are much less than WWE because of the travel. And hopefully they can find a way to start covering those expenses so they can get more exposure across the country and couple the live events with the tapings. But at this point in time, they can do it if they want to. Anything's possible. Keep in mind they're backed by a big company. They've got to explain those expenses. And they can't just hide them, which is what some say that the Turner organization may have done for a while. But and I don't mean anything illegal. I just mean bury it within the profits of other areas. So they've got options. But good questions, and thank you very much for that call out in Los Angeles. Let's continue in the phone zone, and you can be a part of it. The number 276-ESPN or 1-800-990-ESPN. We've got Glenn down in Orlando, Florida, wants to talk about Genesis and TNA in general. Glenn, you're live.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Glenn.
I was actually kind of disappointed to hear that the four-sided ring was actually going to happen. Reason being is because how are they going to pull off a Steel Asylum? How are they going to pull off Lockdown with the four-sided ring after they built a reputation on a six-sided ring?
Yeah, but a cage is a cage, I believe. And Lockdown can still be an all-cage pay-per-view. Steel Asylum, I think, quite frankly, we've seen the last of that. There are not many people who are favorable of it. After especially what we saw on January 4th. But Lockdown not at all impacted. As a matter of fact, over the course of the next few weeks, against all odds, the next pay-per-view on Valentine's Day. But they're moving forward to Lockdown. They're still focusing on those 4 big pay-per-views a year. So the gimmick is the cage, not the 6 sides, as it pertains to Lockdown. And I don't think there's going to be any negative impact on that. That's where you normally say no pun intended.
I'm focused. I'm focused here. Keep going.
Nate?
Glenn,
you're still live, Glenn. Go ahead.
Questions.
Now, can Kennedy actually use Kennedy since it is his first name?
No.
Kennedy? No. His name is Ken Anderson. Kennedy was the name given to him by WWE.
He can use Ken, but not Kennedy.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for calling in, Glenn, from Orlando, Florida. Thanks for being patient as well on hold. We are going to take our final time out of the hour, and when we come back right at the top of the hour, we're going to start our 10 weeks of WrestleMania. And that's absolutely perfect. I miss those vignettes. I remember throwing the football, playing golf. What else
The
did you
basketball.
do? Basketball.
Hitting home runs.
Yeah.
I mean, all of it.
Welcome back to the Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN and ESPNMilwaukee.com. We're live at PWRshow.com as well. Meet in the atmosphere during the timeout. Lots of discussion on the six-sided ring, formerly of TNA Wrestling.
Yeah, the 6 sides of steel was dope because the...
Dope?
Yeah, the cage didn't give as much, according to Positively Johnny. Also, there was a quick question from RWG279, and I would assume he's asking all of us, but my name was on it. Obviously, if TNA called us and asked us to replace Bubba at a Love Sponge, we'd jump at the opportunity.
Thank you for those comments in the atmosphere at PWRshow.com. You can be a part of the phone zone, which we're going to get back to at 1:15. Number 276-ESPN or 1-800-990-ESPN. Gentlemen, TNA Genesis, overall, pass, fail. Frank Cosentino, the Cos.
It's a pass, and the only match was the Sean Morley match, which I could have done without, but It's a pass. It was a good show.
Meathead, pass, fail, TNA Genesis.
It gets a pass only because, you had the debut of Anderson, you had a title change with the girls, and you had a turn on for AJ.
I give it a pass based off of what they had to work with, and at PWRshow.com, the fans say 42% say pass, they actually watched the show. Another 30% saying fail, they watched the show, and another 20 or 30% or so making up the votes that did not watch. So overall, the Internet Wrestling community thinks it's a pass. This is a Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN and ESPNMilwaukee.com.
We'll do it live. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Thing sucks.
You see, KYJ, things have changed just a little bit since the last time you were here.
I think you should see your oculus. Nothing wrong with my feet. I'm talking about your eyes.
I can even make my ass do tricks. Watch this.
You have any idea where you are? You're in the jungle, baby! This is WCW! That's right! Hold on!
For over 10 years, the world's #1 source for professional wrestling news and information. And once again, here's your hosts, Damian Nelson, Frank Cosentino, and the man they call Meathead. This is the Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN.
Welcome to Hour 2 of the Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN, streaming live at ESPNMilwaukee.com and PWRshow.com. We're live Monday night, January the 18th, 2010. Damian Nelson sitting alongside the man they call Meathead and the Cause, David Hero, on assignment tonight. We are sitting here from our beautiful downtown Milwaukee studios. We're looking at Grand Avenue Mall and all kinds of other stuff. You ever shop at Johnny Walker, Frank?
Johnny Walker's got the $100 hookup, right?
I think it was. No. That was that place on by Mater's. I think Bouchard's or something like that. But anyways, they're not paying us, so let's not talk about them anymore.
Sorry, I needed my pimp suit.
Thank you very much for all of you joining us in the atmosphere, and those of you waiting patiently on the phone lines. Russ in Kentucky, Chris from Louisville, Kentucky, and Leon from Orlando. We're going to get to you guys in just a minute, but first, a new feature here in the Pro Wrestling Report that we're going to cover over the next 10 weeks. The 10 best WrestleManias of all time. Each week we're going to count down from 10 to number 1, leading into WrestleMania 26 from Phoenix, Arizona, where we're going to be covering it live from Baby's Steaks and Lemonade right in Glendale, Arizona. So, gentlemen, here are the qualifications. In your personal opinion, the 10 best WrestleManias and why. And let's start with number 10, and we'll start with the ever-so-popular Frank Cosentino, the Cos.
When you gave me this, when we started talking about top 10, and I'm thinking, all right, it's actually pretty difficult to put together because there were some good matches in some and not so good matches in other, and to put it all together. But I had to get in the first WrestleMania in this list, and I'm going to put it at number 10. And the reason is it's because it's the first one. Now, I know that sounds weird, but it's the one that started it all. And there was Vince McMahon and coming out saying this is WrestleMania. We had no idea what we were going to expect. We had no idea.
Welcome to WrestleMania!
We didn't know it'd be another, almost, what are we at? 26 now? So I'm thinking, I've got to get it in there. It wasn't a great one, but it was the first one. And I'm going to leave that at number 10 as on my top 10 WrestleMania.
So WrestleMania 1 is your 10.
That's my number 10.
All right. I can
I
go
know
with that.
It's strange.
It was Miss Susan St. James, wasn't it?
It was.
Was she?
No, it was
she
Liberace.
better in WrestleMania 2.
It was Liberace.
WrestleMania 1 was pioneering, and it was the make-or-break event for World Wrestling Entertainment. Meathead, your number 10 in the 10 best WrestleManias.
I'll give you a date. April 2nd, 2000.
It was also the date, not the year of WrestleMania 6, by the way.
Yeah. Well, WrestleMania 2000 is what I'm talking about. The fact that Ice-T was there, bringing up Godfather and D'Lo Brown, because obviously Ice-T is supposed to be the quote-unquote godfather of gangster music. And here we're just talking about certain establishments here in the city, so I figured I'd, mention Ice-T, D'Lo, and the Godfather. No, it was full of great stuff. I mean, the lead-in from Saturday Night's main event, Saturday Night Live, where they had The Rock hosting for the first time on Saturday Night Live, and then you had McMahon in every corner. It was one of the,
the only four-way WrestleMania, I believe.
It was one of those matches where you didn't really believe that the heel came in as champion and left as champion. I mean, it was part of the McMahon-Helmsley era. So obviously, Steffi Poo went down to the ring with Triple H. Triple H came in.
I'm naive.
Triple H came in.
One of my favorite Stephanie moments.
What? Except for the...
No. When she won the belt, when she won the women's title on SmackDown, the look on her face is just never going to leave my head. Oh, where to Stephanie, too.
Yeah.
Anyway, we digress.
Yeah.
As usual.
So, WrestleMania 2000. That's my number 10.
All right. Good choice. Good WrestleMania out in Anaheim, California. Let's talk about mine. My number 10 would have to go to WrestleMania 22, located here in Chicago, Illinois. You had that great match.
We're in Milwaukee.
I had that great match with Trish Stratus and Mickie James. You had the John Cena Triple H matchup, where everyone knew Triple H was going to win that matchup, and he did not do so. And the fact that it was back in Chicago. While it was in that dump, the Allstate Arena, it was still a very good show, and it was really one of the first weeks that I had the opportunity to do the full WrestleMania experience, Press Conference Hall of Fame, the event, the Raw after. It was a tiring wrestling week, but a good one nonetheless. So that is our number 10 for the Kaz, his 10 best WrestleMania, number 10. It's the first installment of WrestleMania. For the man they call Meathead, WrestleMania in the year 2000, and for me, WrestleMania 22. Tune in next week as we give you our number 9.
Wait. You know what? I said it all wrong. You said it was WrestleMania 2000. Actually, it was WrestleMania in the year 2000.
Next week, we'll have our number 9 in the 10 best WrestleManias as we lead through the next 10 weeks to WrestleMania. I'm going to read a post from the forum at pwrshow.com, which will lead us into our next discussion. And this is posted by a user by the name of The Main Eventer. And you can speak out and get your voice heard in the forum at pwrshow.com, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And he says this. The title is Hogan/Bischoff, the best thing to happen to TNA. And I quote, until recently, TNA was always a small-time promotion. They've remained in the impact zone for too long. The main reason for this, in my opinion, was that while bringing in big names from WWE, TNA still continued to cater to their own small fan base rather than putting out the sort of product casual fans want to see. That's a key point there. And I continue. They know what their fans pop for, so that's what they put on. Unfortunately, this couldn't be more different from what casual wrestling fans want to see from a wrestling show. A few weeks ago, it was reported that Hulk Hogan did not like the six-sided ring and wanted it gone, and now it has. Now, I know most will be complaining that somebody who has only just joined the company could have such influence. I personally believe this to be good for TNA. Unlike others, Hogan and Bischoff actually know what it takes for a wrestling promotion to be big and actually want it to be big and challenge WWE. A six-sided ring will never be taken seriously, and while a fairly minor detail, it will hopefully represent the first step in TNA's transformation into a serious mainstream wrestling company. Obviously, the next step would be to leave the impact zone and, with it, leave behind those fans. TNA would be a lot better with different fans at the shows every week rather than the same, and I'm quoting here, idiots, and Hogan and Bischoff don't care how unpopular decisions may be with the impact zone crowd, which can only be a good thing. Maybe TNA can actually move forward now. End to quote. Some profound things in that post at the forum, and basically touching on some points that while we may not necessarily agree with, are certainly worth discussion. So we talked about the TNA report card, where I'm gonna pick 5 areas in which we're gonna give TNA a letter grade each week. But before we get to that, the question is, Hogan and Bischoff, have they made the right moves so far? And I preface that question with this comment as we evaluate what they've done. They brought in some new talent. Some just don't do anything for the company, namely Sean Morley, the Nasty Boys, Orlando Jordan. Others, though, are a huge help. Ric Flair, Jeff Hardy, Sean Waltman, I would even say, and Ken Anderson. Obviously, they changed the look of the Impact Zone. They eliminated the separate entranceways, which really never had any functional value, and the ever-so-controversial four-sided ring, which I think does offer a more traditional approach to wrestling, And I feel they needed to do it. But even if all that has happened, and even if some of these talents are taking the place of some of the best TNA talents, we still have a problem. What's going to happen with the Samoa Joe? Where's Scott Steiner been? What about Eric Young, the Motor City Machine Guns, Consequences, Creed? But however, some of those talents are being pushed. Maybe not winning, but are being placed on TV. Elijah Burke, Desmond Wolfe, AJ Styles, and Abyss. We'll start with you, Frank. Your thoughts on that comment, that post from the forum, and a couple of the preliminary or a couple of the foundation notes I just gave.
I think Hogan and Bischoff they're in the right state of mind of where they want to take the company.
New York, an Empire state of mind?
They could be. The one thing that I didn't want to see, but if they're going to just do it, then get it out of the way, and I mentioned it the last couple of weeks, has been the Nasty Boys and the Bubba the Love Sponges and the guys that are in Hogan's stable, I guess you want to call it, his buddies. Fine, bring them in, get it out of the way, but don't make it a long-term thing. Bischoff knows how to run a company because he's actually seen a company almost crumble and then take a risk at some point, and he made it work. Now what they've done is I think they're setting a foundation, but I have this feeling that Hogan's going to keep some of his quote-unquote buddies around long enough, which will hurt the program and the overall, because there's such great talent at TNA, young talent that are the future of this organization, and they have to get pushed, I think, sooner rather than later. So if they want to have the Nasty Boys, and at first I disagreed with Dave when he mentioned it. It's going to be great. Yeah,
we thought Dave was crazy.
It'll be great once. Fine. Yeah. Get it out of the way, and then bring this other talent that is your future of your company. I think they have that idea. They just can't blow it. It's one shot, and they have a small window, in my opinion, to get that done.
And the window's still open, by the way.
Oh, it's
for a fair evaluation of this, we need 3 months.
Oh yeah. I would. That's good. 3 to 4 months. Now that in my opinion, the four-sided ring is there, so you now have that foundation, make it work, but push that young talent. That's where it is at.
Mita, just before timeout, your thoughts on that post and the comments leading into it.
Well, it's funny that I'm sitting here thinking, I'm listening to the post, I'm listening to Frank talk, I'm, watching the chat atmosphere, and you know what just popped up? Why did the January 4th episode of TNA Impact seem like that Nitro Reborn episode to me, where everybody was just popping in there? It was pops just for the sake of pops. If we're going to give them 3 months, and this is where I'm going with this, if we're going to give them 3 months, are we going to get the exact same 3 months that we had when we had Millionaires Club versus New Blood? I mean, is that what's going on right now? Because that fell flat. I mean, again, all that was really, in my opinion, was to push the Hogan buddies or, buddies of Bischoff or whatever. I honestly do not want to see the Nasty Boys on TV. I will turn the channel. I mean, they just look terrible. And I never thought I'd say this, poor Devon and poor brother Ray having to sell cookie cutter shots from the Nasty Boys.
Right.
They had to sell that like they were devastating.
Hopefully that's one and done.
When we come back, we're going to enter the phone zone, and we've got that TNA report card we talked about. Also, a discussion on what we know so far about the WWE Royal Rumble coming up in 2 weeks. We're also going to talk about WWE Raw from tonight. The conversation continues in the chatmosphere at PWRshow.com. This is the Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN and ESPNMilwaukee.com.
540 ESPN.
That's not okay.
What? What's not okay about this?
Is this what I think it is?
You want to take a guess and see if you can win the $64,000 question?
I don't want people to know I know this.
Oh, I think you know it. Go ahead and guess.
Nasty Boys?
Yes! Damian Nelson! You are the winner!
Ladies and gentlemen, Damian Nelson knows the Nasty Boys theme song.
Where's my chicken dinner?
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Can I just tell a real quick story? I know this is your guys. I know
begin.
this is your guys' show, and I, I'm not billed as part of the show, but
ladies and gentlemen, fist behind the glass.
Thank you. A friend of mine who is as much of a wrestling fan as I am told me this story.
you remember during like the Ray Combs era of Family Feud, like they'd have some of the wrestlers on?
Oh yeah, that was a WCW stretch.
Right, and well, I think it was even before that. Like they had some WWF versus Glow or something like that.
And he was part of a SummerSlam or something at one point. Ray Combs was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and anyway, so the Nasty Boys were on like one of the wrestling teams that was on Family Feud, and you know when you get to the end, you got those like 5 questions in quick succession. You want your smartest people to go out there. Apparently, Sags was picked by his team to go out there, and he proceeded to embarrass himself by saying things like, Ray Combs would say, "Name an instrument a dentist uses," and Sags would say, "Trombone."
Which reminds me of, did you see Peter Griffin on Family Guy on the Family Feud?
No, I missed it.
He kept saying the same thing over and over, and his wife got 199 points. They needed 1 point. He kept saying the same thing over and over. Again. Oh, you lose. You win nothing. As we digress.
We're going to have to find that clip and put it in the PWR favorites at pwrshow.com. Jerry Sags on Family Feud. You want to talk about riveting television. You want to talk about good TV. That ain't it. Thank you for tuning in. Meet Ed during the timeout in the chatmosphere at pwrshow.com. Some comments flying around about our earlier discussion.
Blanchard Buzz said that he would like to see a TNA Horseman. I don't know if it's possible. Obviously, the name is owned by WWE, but...
Well, watch Impact this week.
Sure. But what about AJ, Anderson, Beer Money, and Flair? Putting that out there.
I'd buy it.
I'd buy that for $1.
Let's go back into the phone zone. Our patient callers who have called us at one of the 2 numbers by which you can join us as well, the number 276-ESPN, or all over the world at 1-800-990-ESPN. Let's go to Russ in Kentucky. Wants to talk more about TNA Genesis. Russ, you're live.
Hey, guys. Hope you're having a great night so far, even after that horrendous Raw.
Yeah. Notice how we haven't talked about Raw, because no matter what, we're going to get accused again of being, those guys. So.
Well, we're TNA biased, apparently, is what we are.
And may I say, God bless you for that.
I just LOL'd in my pants, I think.
Honestly, TNA Genesis, in comparing it to what I've seen of Raw tonight, because I tuned in right about the time of the Cena-Kofi match against Legacy, I felt the TNA pay-per-view was overall better than Raw tonight. And
I wouldn't say that's wrong, but I'm not sure it's a fair comparison. TNA pay-per-view should be better than Raw every week. Right. Just like WWE pay-per-view should be better than Impact every week.
Right. Well, pay-per-view in general should be better than Raw anyway. But the main matches from the pay-per-view Genesis that stood out to me were Pope versus Desmond Wolfe, and I kind of want to see these guys to continue to feud because they've got a lot of good in-ring competition with them, and I've actually been able. When I was up in Cincinnati, when Nigel McGuinness or Desmond Wolfe used to wrestle for HWA up there, I had a chance to see him wrestle live, and he's come a long way since then. So it's good seeing, familiar faces like that, getting a good push and the other match, of course, AJ versus Kurt Angle, and I like what they're doing with AJ Styles because for me personally, is giving him a little bit more character to what he already has, and especially with him having Flair kind of as his manager type role in there. I like where they're going with that.
Yeah, it puts AJ back into a heel spot. I mean, he's only been a face now for the last year maybe. I mean, he was a heel when he ran around with Angle for, a good year and a half.
No, his
Prince
character
AJ
was a joke.
Still a heel. Yeah, he was.
No, he wasn't the true heel. Was Prince AJ?
811, but I understand.
He was in the early days of TNA, though. Weekly pay-per-views 2004 Asylum. He was a heel.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be a good run for him as a bad guy.
Or a heel.
And really,
go ahead.
Oh, well, just having Flair, who was one of the top heels back, in the day when he was within NWA and all that, that'll certainly, I think, play a big factor into how different his heel character is this time around than when he was heel before.
All right. Well, Russ in Kentucky, thank you very much for calling in. I think AJ as a heel is hey, it's different. It was unexpected, and it makes a lot of sense. So that's one good thing that came out of TNA Genesis last night. Speaking of Genesis, Chris from Louisville wants to talk about Genesis as well. Chris, you're live.
Good evening.
Good evening, Chris. Welcome to the show.
I just really want to talk about how TNA has focused on their crowd lately, and that was one of the biggest distractions for me last night was the smarks in the crowd. I think
what is a smark?
Well, it's kind of like these...
Rhetorical, Chris.
Go ahead. What's a rhetorical question?
Yes, exactly. But, it just really seemed to me like the smart guy out there was the guy at the end of the ring with the sign that simply said, these guys are idiots. Because I think they were just, in a way, trying to make TNA what they want instead of what, the other fans, the wrestling fans who, truly do mark out. I mean, I still mark out for certain things, like when Kennedy came out or when Hogan came out. I mean, that's a part of me being a kid. But I just think that they need to get out of that arena. They really need to take that show on the road.
Hey, Chris, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Did you listen to the show weekly, right? You
Yes.
get it on your iPod or you listen to it live or whichever you do. Did you hear the show from last week?
Yes.
We had a caller call in and kind of reiterated something I mentioned. There's a small percentage of fans that watch either TNA, WWE, but a small percentage of people in general that overvalue their opinion on certain things and kind of ruin it for the mass populace. And it seems like, you agree that the small pay-per-view loyals, as Damien has called them now and trademarked them as, kind of ruined the show for a lot of people last night.
Well, here's the thing, Chris. You've got to agree or disagree. You've got to admire and appreciate the passion of those fans who have supported TNA through thick and thin since they've been in the Impact Zone in Orlando, Florida. You've got to support that, and you've got to understand and appreciate their passion and disagreement with change. It's human nature to reject change, and the ones that succeed, the people that succeed, are the ones that don't reject change. Come, a little while from now, people are going to be over this six-sided ring thing. They're going to enjoy the product if the product is good, and a lot of TNA loyals will as well. The piece they may be missing, and what you alluded to and what Meat had alluded to, is that the overall good of the company is at stake. And as Hogan said, it was they were only going so far. They had only gone so far, and you can pick a problem to blame it on, but at least they're doing something. They could have been complacent and still done what they were doing for the small group of 150 people that show up every week at the Impact Zone for the tapings, which, again, need to be appreciated. But at the same time, they've got 2 million people watching their television program every week. Just like WWE, the live TV audience is more important than the live event audience. Plain and simple, fact and done.
It's business.
Chris from Louisville, thank you very much for that call. Let's go now to another caller here in the phone zone at PWR on 540 ESPN. Leon in Orlando, Florida, wants to talk a little bit more about TNA wrestling. Leon, you're live.
What's going on? How y'all doing?
Hey, Leon. What's up? What do you got?
I want to talk about heels and faces in TNA.
True heels?
Huh?
True heels?
Heels and faces in general, and them just confusing me.
Okay, I'm just trying to set you up, Leon. You're too smart for
Let
that.
him talk!
Go
Leon,
ahead.
go!
All right, then. Hulk Hogan comes down. He's clearly a face, but he walks out with Eric Bischoff, who's clearly a heel, and then they look like they get so confused when Hulk Hogan is getting like these mixed reactions. The same thing with like Anderson. He debuted it against face, except for like he's I guess going to be a heel, but on the TNA Impact spoiler, I mean he's
no
going
spoilers on this show though.
Oh, I was going to review who
I know,
it was.
it's okay.
But it's like he's going against the heel, and it's like there's no clear-cut distinction between the heels and the faces, and they just jumble it all up, and people turn heel without, like, real reason. Like ODB, she was just a face, like, you know what I'm saying, not too long ago.
I guess the question needs to be asked, though, does having a clear heel and a clear face make it easier for you to watch wrestling, or do you just watch wrestling to watch wrestling? I mean, because, you know, you got a company like ROH, for example, where a lot of them aren't really clear heels or clear faces. You've got WWE where, they kind of bounce back and forth. I guess, again, that's what I'm asking. Do you need, just you as an individual, do you need to have a clear-cut heel and face to enjoy a match?
Well, I watch wrestling for the entertainment value. I watch wrestling for the overall, product, not just the wrestling, it's the entertainment value. I like for them to tell a story, and it only helps if the story makes sense. You got clear heels like Desmond Wolf, but when you got heels going against heels, and you don't know who to cheer.
Have you seen the card for the Royal Rumble? Undertaker, Mysterio, Orton, Sheamus. You got two heels and two faces in the two main events. I think it's not so much whether they're heels or faces. It's if there's a storyline continuum that matters to you, that you can get emotionally involved with, that you can care about. As I said earlier, nobody cared about Amazing Red Kendrick, aside from it being good wrestling. Nobody cared about Anderson Abyss. And that's the job of the organization, is to get that investment from the fans, us the fans, to make us care about it. Leon from Orlando, thank you very much for calling. Hopefully you're on your way to the OBT tonight.
For Taco Bell.
I wonder how many Church's chickens are on OBT.
I counted 3.
The conversation continues in the chatmosphere at pwrshow.com. This is the Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN and ESPNMilwaukee.com. Welcome back to the Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN and ESPNMilwaukee.com. Damian Nelson, the man they call Meathead, here with you live. Dave Hero is on assignment, and Frank Costantino the Cause has some affairs to tend to. They better have his money in the chatmosphere during the break.
I got a couple of them. For one, Anthony in the chatmosphere said, so Damian Nelson apparently is ashamed that he knows the Nasty Boys theme, but he has no problem knowing about Aldo Montoya's theme?
I was the president of the Aldo Montoya fan club.
He had a card.
I wish I still did. I do still have the T-shirt. Yes, there were T-shirts.
Also, Bookworm 316 says, and this is in all seriousness, obviously not goofing around with theme songs, but TNA, they got to make good changes, not just changes for the sake of changes.
That is a fine line to walk, and thank you for those comments in the chatmosphere at pwrshow.com. As we talked about before we go back into the phone zone in the show, a little bit of a report card. And basically, this is just my take on how TNA is doing. As I said, you need at least 3 months to see if this is working. There's going to be some hits. There's going to be some misses. And the sign, I think, of good leaders in TNA is if they're willing to take those risks that will be misses, because they will learn from them. Nasty boy. So here are the 5 or the 6 categories that I'm going to rate in every week. Pro wrestling, innovation, continuity, logic, character development, and excitement. It's an A through F grade, same points as there were in school. Some of the values are only for effort and not execution, while some are just for execution. So over the course of the last week, I would say, as far as pro wrestling goes, they get a B. As far as innovation goes, they get a B, just above average, comparatively speaking to what we've got out there. Continuity, average, C. They're as good as they can get right now. And as I said earlier, the deck is shuffled. The 50 of the 52 cards are still sitting on the floor. Nobody's picked them up yet, so you can't knock them for that, but I can't praise them for it either. Logic has been relatively decent, so I'll give them an average for that. Character development, for the reason of Pope, Angelo De Niro, Ken Anderson, preserving his character enough to still make it relevant, and the character tweaks of Desmond Wolf, I give that a B. And overall excitement, I give that a B as well, making their average meathead a 2.7, just shy of above average. So basically, TNA's delivering, in my opinion, this week, average product. We'll do that every week for the next few weeks until we can get to a point where the semester's over for TNA Wrestling, and we'll see if this thing has taken or not. We have a lot of polls and a lot of voting sessions available for you at pwrshow.com, and one that we had up for a while was, should TNA move to Monday nights? And the answers were yes in a few months, yes immediately, no never, and no in a few months. So overwhelmingly, people think they should move to Monday nights, as they said yes in a few months at 45%, yes immediately at 33%, 17% saying no never, and only 5% saying no in a few months. which is almost the same as yes in a few months, but not really. So, people want to see TNA on Monday nights.
I know they do, but I think right now maybe the big move should be TNA live after a pay-per-view. I would have loved to have watched TNA live tonight, right after you got Anderson debuting, you got B. Brian Kendrick debuting, AJ turning with Ric Flair's help. Another great AJ Kurt match. JB getting kicked out. Eric Bischoff. I mean, issues. Hot issues, and now you have to wait for 4 days.
We talked about the fan backlash in the TNA Impact Zone this past Sunday night for Genesis. Well, there was a little bit of an address to those fans who, some are reporting, put on their own little protest by not standing in the pit and maybe sitting in the stands instead, which really they're not protesting. TNA gets what they want out of that scenario. But be that as it may, what course of action should these TNA loyals, these TNA originals, these TNA hardcore fans be taking? Should they be supporting the overall direction, whether they like it or not, and giving it a chance? Or should they be making these knee-jerk reactions and making their voice known, as they have done and been praised for it since TNA's been in Orlando in the Impact Zone? Which course of action should they be taking?
I'm going to quote Damian Nelson. I don't know if you know of him. He's been on the show a couple times. Damian Nelson has once said, if you truly disagree with something going on in the ring, you should stand there, turn around, and show your back to the ring. Don't boo. Don't, be profane. Turn your back. If they truly, these loyals, as Damian is, again, marking.
Somebody did it Monday night.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm sorry, Sunday night.
Sunday night. But if that's truly how you feel, you're, again, welcome to your opinion. I'm not against people giving their opinion. But you have to understand, just like a WWE event, just like an ECW event, TNA, WCW, whoever's running a show, they own the building. If they don't like what you're doing on their product, boom, you're out of there.
And here's the thing. If you look at the footage from Genesis, when they were chanting, "We want six sides, we want six sides," there were young children chanting it. Why? Because they were playing along. They didn't want six sides. They didn't know what six sides meant. They were just playing along. So never underestimate the power of a very vocal few when surrounded by others who are easy to follow others.
The squeaky wheel always gets the oil.
WD-40? That's a type of lubricant. They were unhappy with these things specifically that we can extrapolate from the pay-per-view this past Sunday. Ken Anderson calling him overrated, quote-unquote. Now, really, if someone's called overrated, isn't that like a bit of a redundant kind of thing?
No. To call someone overrated means that they feel that their rating is more than they deserve. But
they're acknowledging him by calling him overrated.
Let me finish. Calling someone overrated just acknowledges that they're rated, but they feel that their rating is higher than it should be.
So they're continuing the overrating by saying that they're overrated.
They're calling out their rating. Take the word, break it down, and then explain it.
I think it's redundant. Sean Morley's win over Daniels, I think that was somewhat founded. That didn't make any sense to me. We'll see what happens over the course of the next few weeks. And the four-sided ring, quite frankly, guys, you should have known it was coming. It's been talked about for a long time. Hogan made it pretty clear that change was going to be coming very soon. Real quick, yes or no, is Orlando the problem, Meathead?
The city or the fact that they were there every week? I mean, what are you asking me? Because that's kind
clearly
of a bland
the fact
question.
that they're there every week.
No, that's not clearly the question.
Okay, then was what Hogan and Bischoff said true, which is that the old TNA only got them so far?
That's absolutely true, 100%.
Is Orlando the problem? You know what I mean? Yes, it is. And the same thing would go for ECW in Philadelphia when they were there every week in any other show, wrestling or none other, or any other that is in the front of the same audience week in and week out.
WCW got that too. Remember, WCW Saturday night was in front of, what was it? Was it Disney?
We're at MGM Studios.
MGM Studios. Okay, so they were, on the same, studio, on the same soundstage week after week after week. Again, they had an audience floating around. They just brought them in and said, here's a show, sit down and watch the show. You're right. I think maybe they could go to a different building. I'm not saying travel, but I'm saying go to a different building. Go to an arena.
Let's go back to the phone zone, and let's go to line 3, Matt in Pewaukee, who wants to talk about tonight's WWE Raw. Matt, you're live.
How you guys doing tonight?
Hey, Matt, what's up?
Hey, I just got a question for you. Two brief things, and then I'll let you guys talk about it and see what you think. Number one, are we going to see another DX situation again where Triple H turns again and like he kind of did tonight when he threw Michaels over the thing? Now, I know why he did it because, you know, he's trying to prove a point that, you know, I mean, he wants to win the Rumble as well. But, I mean, are we going to see that again? And then my last thing to you guys is it's been a while since I've seen Edge. I was just wondering if you guys have heard anything on him or if I don't know what's going on with him. So I'm going to let you guys talk away on it, and thanks for everything.
Thank you, Matt in Pewaukee, for calling in. To those 2 points, Royal Rumble's coming up. WWE wants us to believe anybody could win. There are no alliances, only enemies. And quite frankly, DX is going to have to go its separate ways leading into WrestleMania because they need those two talents individually, not together. To the second point about Edge, Edge is out with an injury. He hopes to at least be back on TV sometime before the summer of this year. Best case scenario would be being able to appear at WrestleMania. Worst case scenario is SummerSlam. So Edge is in a pretty bad way and has not been around for a long time. And once he comes back, certainly, as JR would say, business may just pick up in WWE. Let's go back to Tennessee. We must have a tall antenna in Tennessee tonight. Jason, who wants to talk about the TNA roster. Jason, you're live on the Pro Wrestling Report.
Hey, Damian, what's up?
Not much, Jason. How are you?
You guys must know each other.
Huh?
Nothing. Go ahead, Jason.
No, I actually called in last week, and I had to settle for the cause, so I just wanted to specifically shout out him.
Well, Jason, thank you very much for calling. What do you have to say about the TNA roster?
Speaking of my call last week, I called because I was disappointed with the Monday Night Live show. I wanted to follow up on that this week. I watched Impact and Genesis, and it just keeps on disappointing me. The Nasty Boys are in a program. Scott Hall so self-conscious he can't get into the ring. Sean Morley goes over Daniels, who was like in the main event of the pay-per-view for like 2 months.
Right.
It's I just got to say, the way they're going, it's going to keep on disappointing me.
Well, here's the problem. Hogan's, you know, he's got some favors he's given to some of those talents, and some would say justifiably so. Some would say not. I would be in the category of not because this is their make or break moment. If TNA doesn't do it now, they're never going to do it. And when you put the Nasty Boys and the like out there in front of people, you're running a big risk. And I'm not sure if that risk is worth the potential payoff enough to use some of these irrelevant talents who were great in their day and probably had they still been on a national scale for the last several years would still be great. But they've got to really, as I said before, 50 cars are still laying on the ground. They got to pick up the rest of that deck, figure out who's going where, who's doing what, make decisions, go forward with it, take the course that they feel they need to take, use talent, get input, and do what's right, which is what Hogan said he was going to do, by the way. And now some things are happening that make me question that a little. Do what's right moving forward for TNA, the brand, not Hogan, the man. Thank you very much for that call, Jason from Tennessee. We appreciate it. Let's go now out to the East Coast and a PWR favorite, Bowman from Boston. Welcome to the show. Line 2, Bowman from Boston. Welcome to the show.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Bowman, what's happening?
I haven't called in a little while. Just been busy.
Well, welcome back.
Well, thanks for letting us know. What do you got?
Wanted to just watching some of the wrestling, been trying to catch up, seeing TNA, and just kind of, I'm just laughing at the fact that I told a lot of people that the changes that immediately needed to happen on their production side, which was changing the ring and changing the entrance, and that's the two things they did immediately, and I knew that was going to happen.
Mm-hmm. It was logical. It was smart. It made sense.
It made absolute sense. I think that's one of TNA's probably biggest problems right now is that the production just flat out sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think changing the ring and changing the entrance ramp is going to make a better production.
Oh, no, that's the start of things. The next thing they need to do is I think they do need to change this set around just a little bit more to make it more arena style, to make it look like they're in someplace different. Even if they just recorded the same in the same arena, in the same sound stage every time, but just to change the look of it somewhat, just to give it a different feel, will probably help them out a lot better.
Absolutely. They need to keep the product fresh, and it's a game of inches. You heard that analogy before. It's the small things, the little things. It's going to be a compilation of all these things they do that eventually propel them forward if that's indeed the direction they're going to go in.
And that ramp thing, that thing's such a fail. I'm
Not
sorry.
until
It was
Bam
bad.
Bam Bigelow gets slammed through it will it be relevant.
I'm sorry. It was bad. It didn't work in the 80s. It stunk in the 90s, and it's going to stink in
Wait,
the
does that mean
70s.
Chris Canyon's coming back in a triple deck cage and he's going to go through it too?
Let me say this about Eric Bischoff and the WCW, or the people who are saying everything's taking a WCW track. He was very successful for a very long time in WCW. Why not use some of the elements that, A, he's familiar with, and B, that were successful before? It doesn't mean they're going to be successful now, but I don't fault Eric Bischoff at all for the production elements that he has brought to the show, because overall, remember, it's a bunch of small things, overall, it's enhanced the product. TNA looked good with the four-sided ring last night at Genesis, the trusses in the ceiling, the new entrance. It made more sense. It felt more traditional.
I still don't feel that. I still feel completely 100% against that, but that's just my one man's opinion.
I think if they're going to sit there and going to compete, when they decided, when Dixie and the rest of those guys, and TNA sat there, decided that we are now going to challenge WWE. We said, hey, we're going right at them. We want to challenge them directly. That means you need to make a major change if you're going to go towards those guys. And in some ways of competing against somebody, you have to have something similar to them that can draw in people and then be able to contrast against what another product has.
You're right. They need to be able to show that they're putting on the same stage, but the performance on that stage needs to be different. Bowman, thank you for calling in. We need to take a timeout. The conversation continues in the chatmosphere at pwrshow.com, and when we come back, more discussion about tonight's WWE Raw and the Royal Rumble so far. This is the Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN and ESPNMilwaukee.com. Welcome back to the Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN and ESPNMilwaukee.com. Thank you for tuning in wherever you may be. And during the timeout, we have the conversation continuing in the chatmosphere at pwrshow.com.
You know, another one from Blanchard Buzz, he asked, who do you want to see as some surprise entrants in the Royal Rumble this year?
Drew Carey.
No.
Oh.
Kai and Tai?
Choppy.
Haku, the current WCW Hardcore Champion. I don't know if you remember that fish when Ming, as they were calling him WW, came in as it was a mess.
He was a current WCW. By the way, we were talking with Bowman before the timeout, and I forgot to remind some of our newer listeners who may not be aware of what WCW was and what it is a defunct wrestling organization that went out of business and was purchased by WWE in 2001. Hey, that's a fact. I'm just sharing the facts with the peeps out there. You got to lay the foundation and you build the house. When you start making a lot more money, you start building attachments, and garages.
This isn't Monopoly.
You get a dog. Let's go to Queens, New York. Moses, you're live on the Pro Wrestling Report.
Hey, guys, how are you? I'm a first-time caller. My name in the chatmosphere is Ray de Las Vegas and also Moses NYC.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us at pwrshow.com.
Heck yeah, man. My question actually regards the newer acquisitions that are in TNA. I love them, as any fan would, but, all these new guys that are coming in, do you think they're stepping on the toes of the guys that have been there, like maybe Lethal Consequences or even Samoa Joe, who seems to be on a losing streak as of late? Meanwhile, in the early days of TNA, he was simply unstoppable.
Well, I can't blame it on the talents, and the talents shouldn't say no. I mean, they got to make money. They got a living to make. They need to make sure they have a place for everybody. They had to make a splash. They had to have some names come in, and they could have done that without a lot of the people that they did bring in.
Nasty boys.
And they've got to make sure they've got a place for all these people, because now, they're talking about 2 hours of TV a week and a pay-per-view every month. They don't have enough room for all these talents.
Because the thing is that, I would buy, Desmond Wolfe beating Samoa Joe, but no way in 5 minutes. No, I mean, all the battles that both of those guys have been through individually, in 5 minutes he beats them like he did on Impact. I really didn't believe that,
TNA can't walk away from, they keep saying they're pro wrestling or a pro wrestling brand of sports entertainment, whatever. they can't walk away from what was their core, and no matter what, it wasn't the six-sided ring, it wasn't anything else. It was the tremendous talent and the wrestlers that they had that put on the product. That was their core product. That was their signature, but as Hogan said, it only got them so far. And it wasn't just that. There were a lot of issues and a lot of problems which could persist in TNA, but your points are valid. They need to make sure there's room for everybody on the roster. Moses, thank you very much for calling in. Real quick, let's go out to the West Coast now. Anthony from California, you're live, our final caller of the week on the Pro Wrestling Report.
Hey there, guys.
Hi.
Do you think the winner of the Rumble is going to be like someone who's not won it, or it's going to be somebody they already have won before?
It's going to be an established main eventer that wins the Rumble this year.
Well,
There won't be any surprise picks.
Look at what's going to happen at Mania, and granted, the road bump to WrestleMania, No Way Out, could change everything. But you got Sheamus, who needs an opponent, and the Undertaker champion. I guess that's got to change unless Michaels is going to go for the belt, because that match is pretty much locked to happen. And the rumor is it's going to be Sheamus and Triple H at WrestleMania, or potentially Sheamus and Cena at WrestleMania. So a lot of different options, and that always makes for a good Rumble when you have so many people who could win it and not a clear person who will win it.
Yeah, I think the reason why we didn't see Ray in the Rumble this year because each of the previous years he's been in like for 30, 40 minutes, but this time he has a bad knee, so he's not going to be able to do that long.
That is true. Thank you very much for that call, Anthony, out in California. And Meadad, we know of two matches that are going to happen at the Royal Rumble, and the first of which is heel versus heel, as it's Randy Orton versus Sheamus, and the second of which is Undertaker versus Rey Mysterio. I'm intrigued by Sheamus Orton. I'm not at all intrigued by Taker Ray. Not because I'm not the biggest Rey Mysterio fan.
Which you aren't.
But I'm sick of David Goliath. And granted, he's always going to be David, I guess, is Ray. But it's just no desire. I mean, it's not like, can Ray beat The Undertaker at the Royal Rumble in 2 weeks?
No.
Sheamus seemingly needs to go into WrestleMania with the title. You've got this legacy thing brewing. We saw a little bit more tonight on Raw. Could there be a little bit of dissension that causes Orton to lose that match at the Royal Rumble and set up a match between him and one of the members of Legacy, namely, probably, Ted DiBiase at WrestleMania?
Yeah, because it'll be Cody versus Evan Bourne.
Well, Cody got a clean pin on Evan Bourne last week. I hope you guys failed to mention that on the show. I called a bit of that broadcast, by the way. Name the program, Livewire, 1996. Thank you very much for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be all over the world, and thanks for all of you who have called in and participated in the PWR Chatmosphere. The conversation continues all week long at PWRshow.com, and we will be live with you again next Monday night, right after WWE Raw, Monday, the Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN and ESPNMilwaukee.com.